There's a particular conversation between Tyler and Taiwan digital minister, and the conversation is about how can technology act as a conduit for more empathy, or in words of Peter Singer, how can we expand our circle of sentiment. Incidentally, the same point was discussed between Russ Robert and Zena Hitz in the latest episode, and the conversation was about this person who's taking a bus to his office, and the person who's manning the bus or driving the bus is just being seen as instrument, as in the bus is getting you to the office, and then you reach the office. The receptionist is just ensuring that the that some of the things are taken care of, and then so everything sort of becomes instrumentalizing in some sense. If you just step back, the fundamental question, there are many fundamental questions, but one of the fundamental questions could be framed as, do we think there could be a better society? What would the word better here stand for? Are there any examples of such better society in the past? And how did that come about? Are there examples of such better society, community, organization now? And what brings that about? Or even more granular could be, have we had such better experiences where we felt that there is humanity, there is common humanity, there is kindness, there is more trustworthiness in the world still. I think if we nuance this question a little more, there's one more question that would crop up. The question would be, can we feel for more and more people in a manner that our actions directly, indirectly cause them to be treated more as human beings and not any role designation, competency, or anything that could deprive them of common humanity. How do we develop this kind of empathy? I think one way to even begin to address this as a question could be, we can think of human being as having streams of experiences, and these experiences could be people, things, situations, and inner spaces of these while we are interacting with them outside also. And in some sense, we can see that when we have these experiences with different people at different time, with different motivations and different things that we have or want, and the experience we have with these things over a different period of time, or different situations that we find in ourselves in. I think a subtle point here is we have a diversity of experience. We don't have one kind of experience. We have an array, a spectrum of experiences. And when we have this diversity of experience, we have some experiences that we want to go back to again and again. That we approach them, we want them more and more. And there are certain experiences that we do not want to have given a choice. And now, what happens to those experiences that we do not want to go back to? They can be located into certain things, certain situations, certain tasks, certain people. And here is where the challenge comes in. The challenge being that how do we, on an ongoing basis, become aware of our approaches and avoidances of different people, things, situation, tasks. How do we do that? Or even beliefs and opinions, and obviously we can keep increasing this list. And then when we have some kind of avoidance to some of the people, things, situation, tasks, beliefs, values, rules, norms, incentives, we have this first person feeling where we cannot empathize with these. We can't empathize with them. And precisely because we can't empathize with them, we then tend to have some kind of strategy in order to overcome unpleasantness, difficulty, not wantingness, avoidingness. And it is in these strategies that we perhaps go down the path of dehumanizing or becoming ignorant of what these things, people, situations really stand for. Are we doing justice to when we interact with them, when we instrumentalize them, when we try to get to some other end using them or along with them? Imagine this, each of us have these different experiences, the approach experiences, the avoiding experiences, and some of those approaches could be overlapping with each other, and some of the avoiding could be overlapping. In some cases, what is approach for you could be avoid for me. What is avoid for you could be approach for me. So imagine on the x-axis we have my experiences and expectations about future prospects of them in terms of approach and avoid, and on the y-axis it's your experiences and expectations of them in the future as approach and avoid. So we could see that sometimes we both would be sharing the approach, sharing the avoid, and then in some cases something which is approach for me could be avoid for you, something which that could be approach for you could be avoid for me. The question then is, what happens when we have these shared and the unshared abilities, if I may say, the co-abilities and co-competence that we develop? I think in some cases we form tribes, interest groups. So if we avoid something together, if we approach something together, and those are really peak and intense for us, and we hold them in high regard, we could come together and form some kind of coalition to pursue the world, pursue a life, or just spend time together. And where there is the unshared ones, where one is avoid and the other is approach, and one or vice versa, we could be negotiating them differently, and we can get into the nuance in subsequent episodes about them. And I think another question that could be mapped as a systemic or a mind mapping question to these would be, what could be the conditions of a society, and what kind of threads of approach and avoid in individual, in different interest groups could afford that the civilization still continues in a way where it is at least self-preserving to some extent, doesn't self-terminate, and it constantly is working towards creating a better and better balance between the individual and the collective, and the collectives and the collectives, and together with the existence, nature, and so on. It could also be the case that people would have expanded their empathy in the past to, or another way, people would have had obviously some kind of empathy with some people, and then those experiences are also somewhere with people, whether reflectively integrated or reflexively integrated in them. And because of that, people would have had certain analysis, implicit or explicit, about in what cases they should extend their empathy and in what cases they should not extend empathy. And in some sense, this again creates boundaries of where one can empathize and where one cannot empathize, given the past success or failure of extending one's empathy. And here the word success and failure is in a very broader sense. Then there are some further nuance to it. What are the conditions under which empathy can misfire for an individual? Because I believe that empathy always is also not good, and always not empathy is also not good. So how does one develop this understanding of empathy in a more nuanced and a more reflective manner over a period of time, such that it doesn't blind people into making wrong decisions because they feel very strongly about something, and the emotions, affect, feelings, intuitions are firing in a certain direction because one feels empathic, and that leads people into different kind of in-group and out-group tendencies. We'll explore some of these in the next episodes.